Files podcast. I am back. Just me, Will Harris this time. The rest of you are fans of the team that didn't sign Gary Sanchez but did trade away Jose Trevino and sign Paul Goldschmidt. That team is, of course, the New York Yankees. A little bit of an out of sync episode, out of cycle this time. Not the regular show with Whipple or Steve or both or Joey or Matt or some other spot starter. Instead, this time we have an interview that we've been talking about for a little while that I was able to do with former Notre Dame and Yankees minor league catcher Ryan Lidge. Ryan was very nice to accept my invitation to come on the show. We had a really interesting conversation that ranged from what college baseball is like and the decision to go to college when you've been drafted to one knee down catching and being jealous of Kyle Higashioka for not having to do it. And it was a ton of fun. Really appreciate Ryan's willingness to come on the show. So I won't delay much further, but that is what we are going to cut to here in a moment. This is probably the last episode of the calendar year. So thank you for all of your listening to Yankees Files in 2024. We can't wait to see what 2025 will hold. We really hope you enjoy this interview with former Yankees minor leaguer Ryan Lidge. All right, and we are back, joined by a very special guest, former Yankee minor leaguer, former baseball player, catcher for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, Ryan Lidge. Ryan, welcome to the podcast.
Well, I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to having a fun conversation here.
It's great to have you. So I think, we got to start. Our followers know I went to Notre Dame. I don't shut up about it. That's kind of how we operate. So we'll start with college baseball. And you obviously got drafted out of high school by a team I really don't like. One of not that many guys to get drafted by the Red Sox and Yankees in one career. So that's pretty cool. But, being from the Midwest, not too far from South Bend, but also, being drafted. Can you talk a little bit about what goes into that decision of, do I start my pro career now or do I go play college ball?
Yeah, that's a great question because when all the major league scouts were coming, I wasn't ready for it, to be honest. I had no idea. Maybe I was a little bit unaware of my talent at the time, or I had low confidence in myself or whatever it may be. But I guess the perfect way to encapsulate that decision was when I first got the phone call from Coach Aoki at Notre Dame. It was like the first day when the college coach could contact high school recruits. And I remember it's probably 8:00 at night. So it's 9:00 in South Bend because I'm from Chicago. Mm-hmm. And my mom answers the phone and then she hands it to me and they have no idea who it was. He says, "Hey, can I speak to Ryan?" So I'm on the phone and he said, "This is Coach Aoki at Notre Dame." And we're talking. And I realized, well, my parents have no idea who I'm talking to. So I have to kind of let them know. And so I asked Coach, I go, "Well, I know this about your school, but I'm not really sure about the history of Notre Dame." And my dad about fell over in his chair. And I think I had a little bit of a panic attack in a good way. But that I think tells you everything you need to know about why I made that decision to go to Notre Dame. My great-grandma was a huge Notre Dame fan. She actually drove from Chicago to go see them play Miami in the Catholic Olympics. And my cousin Brad went there as well, who was another former big leaguer, Brad Lidge. So the history was there for the family. And it was just it's so hard to turn down an experience of 4 years, not just to play baseball there, but to go to school there. I made that decision pretty early on that I wasn't going to play pro ball. And if I could do it again, I probably would, talk to more MLB scouts more realistically. Sure. But I gave them some huge number just if they do pay me $4 million to go play pro ball, I'll do it. But I wanted to go to school. I want to experience that. You only get to go to college one time when you're 18 to 20, 22, 23. So that was a no-brainer for me at that time.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I think that's a decision that doesn't always get a ton of scrutiny, analysis, just in that I think there are probably a ton of guys out there who there's a check on the table and they've wanted to play pro ball their whole lives and they go do it. And it's really interesting to hear the side of someone who is in that situation, turns that down. You mentioned your cousin, Brad Lidge, obviously phenomenal closer, Astros, Phillies, whatnot. But he is another data point on something that I think people are sleeping on Notre Dame baseball. I really do. There are a lot of very good players in Major League history going back to Carl Yastrzemski, who played baseball for Notre Dame, and people are sleeping on it. And we're going to get into just the absolutely stacked ACC that you played in when you were there. You just missed former podcast guest Eric Jagielo, who, of course, the Yankees picked with their pick before Aaron Judge in 2013 when you were at Notre Dame. But you were playing in a league, or you were playing on a team with Kevin Biggio, with Matt Vierling, who just played in the World Series for the Phillies, of course, beat the Astros this year with the Tigers. But Cal Raleigh was in that league. Zach Gallen was in that league. Will Smith was in that league. Josh Spores was in that league. So I'd love to hear just your assessment of, all right, I'm playing Chicago high school baseball, and now I'm adjusting to the ACC with all these, guys who got drafted and turned it down like you, or, guys who would become future major leaguers. What I also want to hear about is who's a guy that either the baseball world is still sleeping on, or someone who you played when he was 18, 19, and you knew before anyone else, like, that guy's going to be a stud.
Yeah. In regards to Notre Dame's history, it's ridiculous. It really is. When you walk in the building now, if you're lucky enough to get in their new clubhouse, which was being built when I was a senior, which I'm jealous about, there's an unbelievable amount of names that not just got drafted, but got to the big leagues.
For sure.
It's ridiculous. Aaron Heilman, Trey Mancini. People don't know that Torrey Hunter Jr. went there. He did get drafted. He was a stud on the football team. Jeff Samardzija went there. He played baseball there. Golden Tate played baseball at Notre Dame. So
Golden Tate, Cole Kmet.
Cole Kmet was a pitcher. Yep. It's ridiculous. In terms of going from high school baseball to then a stacked ACC, and I committed to Notre Dame when they were in the Big East.
Oh, true.
So I was actually walking the halls in high school, and I got a text from my older brother saying Notre Dame's going to the ACC, and I was so excited walking the halls, and people were looking at me like I'm crazy. I'm like, I always wanted to play in a Power 5 conference. I want to play in the SEC, ACC, Big 12, or in the Pac back then. I couldn't believe it. So freshman year, that was eye-opening. We played some incredible teams. Every single team had at least top 3 round guy on their squad.
For sure.
Even on the lower level, you could call them teams. So like guy by the name of I think his name was Travis Shaw with Boston College. I think he got drafted by the Red Sox. Huge bat, hit like 20 homers or something in a dead ball era for college baseball. But the talent was ridiculous. You played teams like Florida State. Every single guy has a chance to make it to the big leagues. Luke Weaver, who closed for the Yankees this last year, he was the Friday night guy for Florida State, and we actually got 2 runs off.
Okay.
Also had Jameis Winston was their closer.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, and I'll humble brag. Jameis came in Friday night. I'm a freshman. I had to pinch hit against him. I ended up getting a 2-run double that scored the tying run and the go-ahead run in the 8th with 2 outs.
Oh, let's go.
Still losing that game, but Jameis Winston came out to the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air theme song was his walkout pitching. And the crowd's going crazy. I mean, Florida State, that's my favorite place to play. I tell that to everyone. But, I mean, the talent in the ACC was ridiculous from 2013 to 2017. And you got guys that didn't even make it, Will. Guys like, in terms of make it, I really mean like really show how talented they were in college. I mean, we had to face Louisville every year. We didn't beat them. They destroyed us. They had Corey Ray. They had Brendan McKay.
Oh my gosh. 2-way monster.
Drew Ellis. Will Smith was their catcher. But even when Will Smith wasn't their catcher, Colby Fitch was their catcher. Everyone on that squad would get drafted. And if I'm leaving anyone out, I'm sorry, but it's just so stacked. Nick Solak was on that team as well.
Yeah.
So when I played them in 2016, I said, that's the greatest college baseball team ever assembled. And that's Nick Nick Birdie and Zach Birdie were on Louisville. And that was the team that lost to UC Santa Barbara in the Super Regionals off a walk-off grand slam.
Yeah.
And I remember watching that and being like, there goes the greatest team that never was, unfortunately. But ACC was stacked. And then you asked me about who are some people we're still sleeping on.
Yeah.
I think the entire big leagues is sleeping on my boy, Matt Vierling. People don't really know how.
I'm so with you. First of all, shout out Not Hall. Second of all, versatile, good hitter, good defender at a bunch of different positions. I'm with you.
All-time human being. When he walked onto campus, I think 100% of the guys on that Notre Dame squad would say this guy's going to be in the show. It's just a matter of when. It's not if, it's when. And when he got to the Phillies, I was like, there he is. He's on. He's going to be a part of that squad, and they platooned him, which was his role. He's young, but now on the Tigers, I think he's going to start to cement himself as a true everyday guy who's going to bring you value with good at bats, with a good attitude. He's going to grind every day. But along with that, with Matt, is his teammate now, Sean Gunther. So Gunther, he was a year younger than me. And he was a huge part of our 2015 regional team at Notre Dame.
Yep.
Gunther, he's a bulldog. He's going to come at you with his best stuff. I think that he's finally got to the show. He has really, really top plus stuff, in my opinion, just from catching him, not just at Notre Dame, but throughout his pro career, going down to Florida to catch him sometimes at Cressy Sports Performance.
Yep.
I think Sean's a stud, and I don't want to take anything away from anyone else. My senior year, we got tied for the most guys drafted out of Notre Dame. And I played with guys like Kevin Biggio, Nick Podkol, Cole Daly, Pete Solomon, Brandon Bielak, who's been with the Astros for many years now. He's got a ring with them. All those guys are studs. It's hard to say that we didn't sleep on every single one of them, to be honest. I think that every guy that I played in the ACC and every guy I played at Notre Dame should have at least gotten one day in the show. At least. That's how talented I think a lot of baseball players are. Unfortunately, that's not always the case. But it is what it is. And I'm very blessed to have played against some of the best baseball players in the world. So.
And you didn't just do that in the ACC. You also did that. You played some elite summer ball. Including being a Cape Cod League teammate of 2024 Yankee Jake Cousins. I feel like we hear kind of the legends of the Cape Cod League of just like, first of all, what an amazing time it is to like go spend your summer out there and play on one of these phenomenal teams with the best college players from across the country. What was it actually like being in that?
Yeah, it was awesome. I actually got to go there with my twin brother, Dylan.
Amazing.
So I found out I was going to the Cape. And I kind of knew it was happening. And I guess to take you back, I played in the Northwoods League after my freshman year. And I guess if we're talking about some baseball players that I played against, the Northwoods League, I made the All-Star game, and the All-Star game was 1-0. That was the final. The only reason why we got a run was because there's a guy by the name of Pete Alonso that hit a ball.
Heard of him?
Yeah, heard of him. Hit a ball off the bat that I'm telling you didn't go higher than 50 feet. And it went dead center, and nobody does that. He was a freshman at the time. No one does that. No one does that. And we all looked around in that dugout. And we were like, okay, he's going to Florida. He's a Gator. We see the writing on the wall. So that's a guy that I thought people were sleeping on actually, even when they drafted him, because he wasn't even a first rounder.
Yeah.
But then going to the Cape was easier than the Northwoods because you travel around the Cape instead of all around the Midwest, essentially. And North Midwest. But being there with my twin brother was extremely special. I got to go there with Kevin Biggio and another Notre Dame teammate, Scott Tully, and then a ton of ACC guys. Our shortstop, Connor Justice, was there. He's a Georgia Tech guy. We had catcher from Santa Clara. We had pitchers from North Carolina. And then we had smaller school guys all over the place. Mikey Hernandez was another catcher who was a D2 baseball player. He ended up getting drafted by the Marlins. So the talent in the Cape is ridiculous, and you're going to get scouted by scouts every single game. In terms of the best guys in the Cape, I can't there's not enough time to list the names.
For sure.
There really isn't. The guy who won the MVP that year was Nick Senzel, who was first rounder by the Reds.
Yep.
And I think he's been in the show for almost a decade now, it feels like. So there's crazy talent, but it's a fun summer. I mean, it's relaxing. There's obviously pressure when you play. But being able to say that I was a guy that got to play in that Cape Cod League still holds a special place in my heart.
For sure. So I want to transition to getting picked by the Yankees. I think, first of all, there's a ton to get into here, including some stacked teams you played on in the Yankee system. But one thing that I think we can uniquely focus on here is the fact that you were a catcher. And it feels like in the last 10, 15 years, we've kind of been in this renaissance of catcher development, whether it's everything we know about receiving and framing and what the pitch tracking data is doing for us there, whether it's this, one knee down versus conventional stance situation. I'd love to hear about, you get picked by the Yankees, you're going to stay at catcher. What does that development path look like? What have they set out for you? What are their priorities in developing a catcher in their system? And how did that relate to the way you had kind of molded yourself as a player until that point?
Yeah, I love that question because it's super unique, the answer. So I got drafted by the Yankees. I kind of knew I was going to get drafted by them. I expect to get drafted my junior year. Didn't happen. Didn't have a great year at all. And then senior year, I played well enough to have the Yankee scout take a look at me and say, okay, we're gonna go with you in the 20th round. So a little bit of a later pick, and it's only 20 rounds now. That's when it was 40 rounds. So when I knew I was going to be a catcher, that was my strong suit. My bat, I really believed in. I knew it would come around. I just needed tweaks here, there. But when I got to the Yankees, it was still traditional. There was no such thing as one knee down. Benito Santiago did it when he played, and some guys, Yadier Molina was doing it. But it really wasn't anything that you did with runners on base. Like, you didn't do that at all. That was like, no, don't be doing that. We're gonna be on 2 feet. If you want to receive on one knee with no one on, awesome. When people are on base, 2 feet, receive, block, throw. That's what we want to do in that order. But blocking will still take a precedent, and we still want to throw guys out. And that was my specialty. I could throw guys out, and I always had confidence in that. So I really used that as my strong suit. So then we worked on that, and you work on that from 2017, 2018 to 2019. It's the same thing. We had this same coordinator, same catching coaches that I really looked to. Hector Rabago was a guy that I really looked to for a lot of help. He's a Phillies bullpen catcher now, I believe. JD Klosser was my coordinator for the most of the time. Josh Paul was my coordinator when I got drafted. And those were just, awesome catching guys who loved the 2 feet, know how to receive, knew how to taught it, and knew how to taught throwing, knew how to teach blocking. So then 2020 comes around, and Mitch Garver of the Twins with and I'm going to blank on his name, on our new coordinator.
Tanner Swanson.
Tanner Swanson. There you go. He became our coordinator. I never had a conversation with Tanner. It was only with Aaron Gershenfeld, who was the new coordinator. So Tanner was overlooking the whole thing. Aaron Gershenfeld then took the reins, who ended up being a former teammate of a guy I ended up playing with, Grant Kay, at Louisville.
Oh, so that's funny.
So many crazy connections. It's wild how baseball works. So that was the first time that one knee started coming along. I show up to spring training, and everyone's on one knee. All the guys that I played with are doing things differently. And I'm like, the heck is going on here? And they say, just don't worry about it. Just do your thing. So, okay. So now the guys are looking at me like, well, why aren't you doing what we're doing? And I'm like, what the heck's going on? This is just day one.
Yeah. So
then I get the whole spiel of going on one knee, how this helps, all the numbers and all that stuff. And I understood it. I understood what they wanted me to do. So I got to learn the way that people want to be taught, right? So I think everyone teaches the one knee a certain way. I think the way that I was taught as the Yankees made the most sense in terms of just mechanically and then mentally what you were trying to do. With that said, I need to really see the numbers behind it, because do I believe that if there's a runner on second and I'm on one knee and I have a chance to then receive a ball, that maybe a ball if I'm on 2 feet, but now because I'm lower to the ground, I can now make that low pitch a strike. The low ball now is a strike. So instead of a 2-1 count, maybe I make it a 1-2 count. And the numbers there is ridiculous. You go to you go under 200 to 1-2 and over 400 or something like that with a 2-1, maybe even higher. I have to see the data. I really do. Because I believe them. I believe that they really think that this is what's going to make us win. But when there's a runner on second and you don't block a ball because you can't athletically get there because you are limited to yourself on one knee, I just had a hard time saying, well, now the guy's on third. What happens? Now, something that you really can't track too well is the way that the pitcher thinks, the way that the stress is on. Now the way we have to change the game calling because the runner went from second to third. And now I have to be more concerned about a ball in the dirt. But if I'm staying on one knee and that ball gets by me, that guy scores, right? I would say that I want to take more of the risk of maybe I lose that ball that's that far off. But if I train hard enough, I'm still going to get it. Guys were successful even without going on one knee.
Sure.
I need to take the risk and say, maybe I'll miss a strike that maybe wouldn't have been called a strike anyways, because umpires in the bigs, people might not actually believe this, but they're actually really good at what they do. They're actually crazy good at what they do. I would rather block that ball and save that run and then say, okay, it's a 2-1 count. At least I have a chance here. But if I don't even attempt to block it or I just try to pick it, it ain't going anywhere. The guy's going to score. And now that's a run. And that happens all the time. It happens all the time. So do I believe that there is a crazy amount of value in being able to receive? Absolutely. But when I look at the teams that win the World Series, is it always the best receiver that wins the World Series? No, it's the catcher that can do it all. It's the guy who can manage the pitching staff and has talent at every single facet. So it's a hard conversation because I don't know all the stats, but my gut intuition is that you need to keep catchers athletic and you need to not put them into one shoebox and say, this is what you have to do. You have to do this. You have to do that. You have to do that. Because now I think that you hurt yourself. I think you limit what you can do as a defensive catcher.
So I have 2 follow-ups from that. The first is one thing that we as fans don't have a window into very often is how these things are being communicated. So you show up to spring training in 2020, you're catching in the conventional stance, and you get the news, we're going to be moving to a 1 knee down team philosophy. How is that message delivered to you? Is there a process of persuasion? At that point you have multiple minor league seasons under your belt. You've been up to AAA, like you're clearly doing well for yourself. Is there anything like, Ryan, we'd really like you to do this and here's why? How are they delivering why you're making this big change?
You have no choice. You're doing it. And I think that's probably how it should be. If you really believe this is going to work, then we're going to make sure all our pitchers do it. It was no choice. I'm going to do that. I think some guys might have had a little bit of freedom with what they decide to do, but we got a PowerPoint when spring training officially started. We got a PowerPoint. He went through the PowerPoint. Gersh, our coordinator, went through the PowerPoint. The other coaches were there, and those coaches had to be on board too. So it's hard when all of a sudden something that's been done for a long, long time, for 100 years, is now going to change to this is how we're going to do it. Is it that drastic of a change? Some people will say no. I think it is. I think it's a crazy drastic change. So you're essentially not persuaded to do it. You're said, this is why it works, and this is why we're going to do it. Which, if you believe it that way, then I'm all for it. I think awesome. That's how I want that message delivered. I don't want you half in, half out. Tell me why this is going to make me more valuable as a catcher. But I remember I had a question after, and I'm not going to say who I asked it to because I'm not trying to throw names out or anything, but I went up to him and I said, well, what happens if I'm in a 1 knee stance and the guy throws a pitch that I know I could block on 2 feet, but the ball gets by me because I have not as nearly as much mobility and flexibility going a certain way, and now I can't block it. And now the run scores and we lose. Well, the answer I got was, well, there's more than one way to lose a game. And I was kind of taken aback by that answer because I'm like, well, at that point in time, I was the reason why we lost the game. And of course, maybe we should have scored more runs.
Sure.
Maybe the pitcher should have not let that guy get on. But I don't think in the moment you play that game, you say, well, today specifically, this is what's going to help me win, or this is what might make me lose. So I was kind of taken aback by that answer. Was the person I asked that maybe unsure of what to say? Maybe, but it was at that moment where I was like, okay, maybe not everyone actually buys into this, because it is hard to buy into as a. I mean, you see it all over the place nowadays. It's everywhere. Even MLB Network talks about it. So obviously there's a conflict there, and I just think people need to be more open and actually, like you said, communicate that these are the numbers, and these are why we think that this is the best way to go about it. Because those numbers are out there somewhere, but for some reason no one wants to share it. And the only numbers you get are this is how many runs he saved via receiving. But you never really get, well, what did he lose when he didn't block a ball? How many balls were thrown in the dirt? How many balls got past him? Or how many balls got past him that he could have just caught on 2 feet and he couldn't get to it because he was on one knee? I think that's a bigger deal than most people make it out to be. I think there's more context involved in terms of the numbers, because in reality, those numbers are fake runs saved. So when a guy receives a ball and he saved 1 run or 0.5 runs, those are just made up runs. Those aren't real runs. They're just using data to say this is what this guy actually saved. There's no way of actually saying that he actually would have saved those runs. So I don't know, maybe someone listening to me, it totally disagrees with me on that and says, I don't know what I'm talking about. But just playing ball for 10 years, playing pro ball for a long time, I just saw more value in blocking a ball than receiving it. To be honest. And yes, receiving it helps, but man, if you don't got a catcher that can block a ball, now it affects your pitcher's psyche. It affects your defense's psyche, and affects how the other team feels on the base paths. They're going to run rampant on you. So you can't really qualify that. You can't make that into quantifiable data. So that's where I'm coming from, really.
Was everyone jealous of Higgy getting to stay on 2 feet?
Oh yeah. Higgy was that. It was like, well, here's the thing with Higgy is he was already a stud. So it's like, you do not change him. Do not change Kyle. He's got it. He's got crazy good hands. I would just sit there and watch him catch bullpens, and I just, oh my God, what's he doing? This is how he does it. This is how he does it. And he did things differently than everyone else, no matter what.
Totally.
And if you're watching, I guess I'll kind of show. So Higgy would turn. So he would catch the ball and his glove kind of turns, right? We were taught for a while that when you catch it, you want to keep the lips of the glove facing the pitcher. So present the pitcher the ball so he can almost see it. And when you turn your glove, that's a different way of presenting it. Higgy did that. We weren't, as minor leaguers, we were taught not to do that. So Higgy did things that, because they worked so well, and because he caught at that time when I was with him, he was already in the organization for such a long time.
Yeah.
That, okay, let Kyle do his thing. He's one of the best receivers in baseball. He's a great defensive catcher. So we're not really going to touch him. And I applauded him for it. I said, dude, you got your niche. You know what you're doing. And now he's in the bigs he's a big leaguer. That's just what it is. That's all you're trying to get to, is get to the show and then stay there. Because it's easy to get there. It's hard to stay there. And because of Higgy's dedication to his craft, that's why he's still there.
Yeah. And I mean, what an incredible development story, just to, for a guy who was in the minor leagues for so long to come up to ultimately be like, the personal catcher for one of the best pitchers in baseball. And then look, like, say what you will about the Yankees catching situation and having Trevino and Wells and, maybe being able to get creative with how they use Kyle Higashioka, but like, Padres clearly saw value in him. To be traded as part of the Juan Soto package, like pretty cool. And quite a development story.
I think he also brings a really high baseball intellect to the way he's calling games. And he's also a great bat. He's got juice. So it's not like he's a one-dimensional player, because a lot of times when you get catchers who can receive well, they become one-dimensional. They really just help us with receiving the ball. They don't help us offensively. And you need someone to move that line. You need someone to have good at bats, know what's going on. You're a catcher. You understand how pitch calling works. So you should, in my opinion, the catcher should at least have the idea of having a great at bat. So unfortunately, sometimes we focus so much on the defensive side that we forget we also need to hit. I always thought that catchers should be great hitters still. I think that's an excuse that people make, is that, oh, well, he's got to work on defense. Well, he can spend an hour on his hitting as well, right? So, but when you get tabbed a certain way where you're just a receiver or you're just a catcher, then no one ever says that we need value from you from a certain way. So like Trevino and Wells, they do it on both ends. Like they're not just one dimensional, especially Wells. Like he's got that lefty bat. That's great for Yankee Stadium. He's the future. And they're both really good defensively. So watching them in the World Series, I wouldn't say changed my mind on the one knee, but I saw the value in it. I still see the value in it. I still have a bias because I did it for so long. I did it in college, and then doing the one knee myself and then doing the 2 feet myself. I just felt like I had more confidence on 2 feet. Some people might have more confidence on one knee. That's the way the game is. And I think people need to be okay with disagreeing on that. I think people will hear, well, I'm a one knee guy. And then someone just, starts bashing them for it. Or I'm a 2 feet guy and start bashing them. Well, you're old, you're a dinosaur. I think that there needs to be a nice flux of, this is what we think. This is what we think. I do think you're going to start seeing catchers catch again on 2 feet, because I think some people there's some data that's going to come out that says, well, this is what we got on, when a runner's on second, and this is what's been happening the last 5 years or whatever it may be. So I just think there needs to be more communication between those who believe in it and those who don't.
So Ryan, I don't want to take too much of your time, but there's one other major player dev topic we have to get into, which is on the hitting side. You played with the famous or infamous, depending on how you see it, Ben Ruda in the Yankees system. And he went viral in 2023 for talking about, I think, what he called bizarre training methods that got instituted on the hitting development side later in his minor league career with the Yankees, around the time that you were there as well. He talked about there being a little bit of a divide in clubhouses of guys who wanted to go along with that stuff and guys who were a little bit more resistant. He named some names, including Chris Gittens, who of course then got to the majors with the Yankees. I'd love to just hear your take on here. Actually, you know what? I'm going to tell you how the Ben Ruda story looks to an analytically inclined outsider. And I'd love to hear from the inside what you were experiencing and what I might be missing.
Yeah.
So Ben Ruda, it seemed to me like his primary gripe was that he got sent down at a time when he was hitting well. He got sent down from either AAA to AA or AA to high A at a time when he was hitting well. And if you look into the stats, the reason that he was hitting so well is a lot of balls that he was putting in play ended up being hits, like way more than anyone else realistically sustains over a long period of time. And he said, quote, "That was the first time an analytic was used against me, because the Yankees said, look, you're getting lucky. We'd like to see you hit the ball basically higher and harder. And it's great that you're having these ground balls get through, but like, that's really not what we want your goal to be as a hitter. We think you can do other things more sustainably." And of course he gets sent down. When he comes back up, he hits even better, which I think is kind of a point against him. Like he has this whole narrative about like analytics arrive and then everything goes to shit. And it's like, actually, Ben, you personally got a lot better after that time that you're saying is the time when things went away that you don't like. So from an outsider who's just looking at the stats, who wasn't watching Ben Ruda day in and day out, it looks like you can tell a story that pretty closely aligns to what he's saying the Yankees told him. And again, to me, it seems like the Yankees were correct. But I'd love to hear, as someone who was in that clubhouse, what were they asking you to prioritize as hitters? What was the objective? There was a lot of just kind of weird discourse, and I don't think we ever got a complete story. So it'd be really interesting to get your perspective.
Yeah. So, I was tabbed as a guy who couldn't hit immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Immediately. I wasn't ever going to make the bigs because of my bat. I got essentially blackballed because of that, which I guess we could have another podcast talking all about my independent ball career. When I
would love that.
Yeah, I'd love to be back on just to discuss it. Because
come back anytime.
Before I even get on, independent ball is crazy talented, and I didn't believe it until I actually had to experience it.
Mhm.
So, you know, first I'll talk about Ben first. So Ben was one of the first teammates I had when I went to Charleston and the year I got drafted. And the first thing that got me was how dedicated he was to hitting.
Mhm.
He was in the cages every day. He was working on something specific every day. Him and Brandon Wagner, they were like two guys. I think they're from the same area. So I would just kind of keep tabs on them. What are they working on? Because I wanted to work. I wanted to be like them. I wanted to be like Ben. Ben had quick friggin' hands. Wags had juice. He was the player of the year in the Florida State League. When it comes to Ben, I think if you asked him, you know, do you believe in those numbers? I don't think he's going to tell you, no, he doesn't believe in them. I think obviously they are what they are. And of course, Ben thinks if I hit the ball harder, I'm going to probably more likely get on base. If I hit the ball in the air hard, it's going to be better for me. But here's where I have a gripe with this luck factor, whatever that may be. And I don't really know how they calculate it. It's probably based off how hard you hit the ball. What are the chances of that being a hit most of the time based off accumulation of stats? If you're in a 1-1 count and you're let's just use an example here. I'm facing a guy who is busting me inside over and over and over again, but they shifted on me. The defense shifted on me to play that so that if I pull the ball, especially Ben being a lefty, which I was also a lefty, I'm not going to pull the ball. If I pull the ball, it's going to go right to the shift. That's why they shifted on me. So even though he's throwing inside, maybe I try to inside out this thing and get on base and get a hit to over where the shortstop would be. So if I inside out it, maybe I'm not going to barrel it as hard, right? So maybe instead of 95 plus off the bat, it's 80. But I'm getting a hit. I'm getting on base, and I'm taking what they're giving me. So you're going to tab that as, well, that's never usually a hit. So you're going to get a low score on that. And now it's going to look more, oh, you just got lucky. I didn't get lucky. I was freaking smart. I was really smart about this is what I'm going to do with it. And Ben was a guy who did that all the time. Why would I try to hit it where the defense is? We see that happen all the time. Joey Gallo, he kept hitting it right where guys were, and he never made an adjustment. Could he hit homers? Absolutely. Do I think Joey Gallo is an excellent hitter? Absolutely. Did I get paid a lot of money to hit long balls? Well, then go do it, Joey. Go hit long balls. I'm not paying you to hit 300. So I don't blame anything that Joey Gallo did. I'm talking more of, you know, there's a strategy involved in hitting too. It's not just hitting the ball hard. And I think that's where the miscommunication was in the Yankees was I would see a guy like Ezekiel Duran hitting balls 110 in the cages, 110. I'm like, this is unbelievable. How does somebody do that? But if I go out there and I always try to, and this isn't anything to do with Duran, by the way, that he was just an example. Like that's hitting the crap out of the ball. But if I always try to hit the ball 110, 110, 110, 110, 110, I'm probably going to swing and miss a lot. Probably going to have try way too hard on pitches, and I'm not actually taking what the defense gives me. So
yeah, you're not talking about Ezekiel Duran. You're talking about Estevan Florial. I can say it. You don't have to say it. I'm joking.
No. Every teammate I ran into with the Yankees was awesome, and that's a big reason why I love the organization. The scouts knew how to scout good dudes. I never ran into one bad dude. I'm talking here about in a 2-0 count, I'm gonna get my swing off. In an 0 count, if I'm selling out for a certain pitch, I'm going to get my swing off, even maybe in a 2-1 count or even in an 0-1 count. But at some point, if you want to win baseball games, you need to get on base, right? It's like the money ball. He gets on base. So how did Ben Ruda get on base? Well, he hit it where they weren't. And he could dictate that by what is this pitcher doing? What is he trying to do to me? And even though he's throwing me curveball, and they're shifted on me or they're going this way, I'm going to take what he gives me and I'm going to make sure I get a base hit here. Is this the right time with the wind blowing in, right? With the wind hard in Tampa, or with a stud center fielder, nothing's getting through this infield. Is this a good time for me to just try to swing as hard as I can here? Probably not, right? And I think Ben was more of a smart, high IQ baseball hitter, so he had numbers that went against him. But in reality, that should tell you now you need some context behind those numbers. Was Ben getting lucky because he's just getting lucky? Or is he getting lucky because he's thinking the right way? And he's thinking like a professional Tony Gwynn-like hitter, right? Like an Ichiro. Guys who could hit balls into play, and Ben was fast enough to beat it out too. That's the other thing. So there's more into this than just did you hit the ball hard and did you hit it in the air? And if you're just using those two numbers, I think you're gravely mistaken. I think you're taking out the genius of the art of hitting instead of just, okay, are you strong? And then do you hit the ball in the air? Because yeah, there are guys that can get away with it. Aaron Judge, he can do that a lot. But there are some guys and there are some players that you just need, like a Luis Arias, which people for some reason say he's not as good as they think he is. The dude knows how to hit. He knows how to put the ball in play. He knows how to attack the pitcher based off his strengths and their weaknesses or what they're trying to do. So there is way more context involved in this luck factor. I think Ben should have gotten to the show. Mm-hmm. And I applaud him for being openly spoken about what happened to him in the minor leagues, because I think a lot of people want to hear that stuff. So it's great for baseball fans, but it also will start a conversation on, okay, are we actually communicating with our players properly? Because obviously Ben didn't agree. So that means that you didn't communicate as well with Ben that you should have. And I'll speak from a personal standpoint with communication, and I'll kind of finish my point here. You can tell I'm very passionate about the sport and about
I love it.
My time. My bat didn't play too well in the minors for a little bit, and I had spurts. Now, I mean, I could use it as an excuse, but I didn't play a whole lot in terms of like I would play once a week. One time I didn't play for 2 weeks. I'd be an extended, and then I'd fly here, I'd fly here. I think I had like a total of 12 to 15 plane flights in 2018 and 2019, just because someone got hurt, Lidge, go here. Someone got hurt, Lidge, go here. Okay, they're back. So Lidge, go back up in rookie ball, and I'm 25 years old.
Yeah.
But I had a meeting with one of the hitting guys, maybe a couple of them, again, not going to use names. And I sat down and we went over my swing. And I was told, don't change a thing. I'm like, well, don't change a thing. So that must mean everything's going great. Well, reality is it's not going great. So can hitting coaches relay actually what they see versus what they know? I'm not sure. I think that there's a communication challenge. And then I would also see guys who were paid more money and who were top prospects who wouldn't go out and try to look for help, but get the help anyways and have these one-on-one meetings with whether it's a coordinator or a hitting coach or a top-level guy, whereas I was actively seeking out help all the time, and I never really got it back.
Interesting.
So I don't want to like rub anyone the wrong way with that. But I want to just make sure that people understand that money talks in the minor leagues. Money talks, where you drafted talks. There's so much talent in guys who get drafted low, and all they need is maybe one piece of advice to then take off and become like a Justin Turner on the Dodgers, or become like a Charlie Blackmon and just play for a long time. Because Charlie Blackmon, for what people don't know, is he was a pitcher at Georgia Tech for 4 years.
How about
and
that?
And his last year, he became a center fielder and a hit. So obviously something worked for him. Just saying one thing worked for him. I think he was still a high pick out of college anyways. But my point being that there's a communication challenge in minor league baseball. And there always may be, because there's so many players you're working with. Mm-hmm. And I always was respected. People always respected me. And when I did go seek help, I did get time. But I didn't ever feel like I got as much as I asked for, which, that's just maybe my opinion. But once I did finally get the help I got, I mean, you can just look at my numbers from independent ball, which honestly, when I was in indie ball, I really wanted to get picked up by a minor league team. My last year, I didn't. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to get signed because I was having way more fun playing indie ball. And I was actually getting paid more playing independent baseball than I was playing minor league baseball.
Well, so, that's its own issue.
That's its own show.
Yeah, I'd love to get into that stuff. I think it's fascinating. Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting perspective you bring, and I think that last part that you were getting into gets into one of like the central tensions of being a minor league baseball player, which is, sure, you're on this team and you're in this organization, but at the end of the day, you're really out for yourself. I mean,
I had to hit batting practice with coaches who couldn't throw batting practice.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking at guys around me, and, we're all very aware of our situations and, okay, like who's who and who's a prospect and who's where. And when I wasn't hitting with just catchers, I could see who I was hitting with. And I think other guys saw that they were hitting with Lidge and saying like, okay, well, is this a good thing or not? Not a good thing. I don't know. Does that have any credibility to it? I don't know. But then I would get a guy who couldn't throw batting practice. I'd be sitting there for 10 pitches, couldn't get a pitch. So I'm not getting any work in on the day.
Yeah.
Right. So I felt like I was being disrespected in that regard. Whereas other guys could get guys who were throwing good batting practice, guys were throwing good batting practice. And that's, again, another episode where we're getting a lot of baseball people that are a lot of guys signed in baseball and now coaches that don't have any baseball experience. And they're just using numbers, and they can write a thesis really well out of college. And then they get signed by a team because they sound very intellectual, but can they now relay that information to a 25-year-old who's been playing since he was 7?
Sure.
And he's got to do it in the moment versus, okay, well, we're just here in a college baseball or an academy type thing. So I think there's so much talent, there's so much knowledge to go around. It's how are you using it and how are you relaying your message? Because I didn't feel like I ever got really relayed the message with the Yankees.
Very interesting. Before we wrap up here, just for your baseball career, and if we're going to have you back to talk about indie ball, let's limit it to just college and minor leagues. Best memory and biggest challenge that you faced.
Okay. Biggest challenge I faced was managing my emotions through the minor leagues. And I want to say this with the utmost respect. The Yankees took their chance on me as a 20th round pick, and I get to say I was a New York Yankee. Like, I get to say that I was in the clubhouse with some unbelievable people, some incredible coaches, awesome coordinators, awesome player development guys. So I don't want anyone to listen to this and think that I'm not appreciative of anything I got. I'm just strictly speaking from like a constructive criticism standpoint, where this is how you can make this better. So, and if they want to contact me, they can. I would love it, actually. I'd love to touch base with some of those guys. That was the biggest challenge. Was I'm in Charleston. And I'll just use it as an example. I'm in Charleston. One guy gets hurt in Trenton. Boom, Lidge, you're going to Trenton. So now I got to wake up in the morning at like 3 a.m.
Yep.
I got to get on a flight to go to Trenton. I go to Trenton, fly there. Now I'm playing that day, even though I got no sleep. I'm obviously like exhausted. And now I got to learn a whole new team that I'm not really buddies with. They know me, but I can't say I'm close with them. And now I play there for a week, and now you know what? Okay, the guy in Trenton's back, Lidge, you're going now to Staten Island. Okay, now I got to take either an Uber or a ride to Staten Island. And now I'm there for Staten Island for 4 days, and now the guy in Trenton gets hurt again. Okay, now I got to go back to Trenton. Okay, now I'm there for a month. Okay, now I finally get my feet wet. Lidge, you know what? You're going to AAA. Oh, awesome, cool. You're only going to be there for a week, though, because they're going to Europe. Okay, cool. So I'm there for a week. Now, not even from AAA, I go all the way down to Charleston. So now I'm back in Charleston, and now I'm playing in Charleston again. And now I'm going to Tampa because someone got hurt in Tampa. And that's all within a matter of 3-4 weeks. So I'm going all over the place. I don't feel like I have a home. And I know I did that because they trusted me so much, and I could handle it mentally. I could be mature about it. I could be professional about it. And I could manage the staff. So with that said, I was able to form a relationship with so many guys in the organization because of that. But man, was that hard. That was hard to go in a coach's office, manager's office, knowing that this isn't a big league call up. I'm either going down or I'm going up for a rental. So that was a huge challenge for me. I did get a lot of miles for it, though, so I'll say that.
Love that. That's big.
And my favorite memory is 100% playing with some of my best friends. I don't have one in particular. Maybe personally, my favorite memory was my last hit ever as a New York Yankee. Minor league was a home run.
Let's go.
The home run against the Red Sox in Charleston. 3-run homer. So that was the last swing I ever had as a Yankee. So that's an awesome memory. I'll never forget that. But really playing with some of my best friends, guys like Nick Green, who should today, in my opinion, be in the big leagues. And the fact that he's not, I think, is an atrocity, because that is one of the most hard-nosed, hardworking, talented pitchers that I've ever caught, ever. And I'll just leave it at that. And then like guys like Matt Wivenez, I still talk to them to this day. They're two of my best friends. And so maybe my favorite memory is when I first stepped foot in Charleston, South Carolina, and they were my teammates.
That's awesome.
So, and you build these relationships in the minor leagues that last literally a lifetime. So that is maybe what I'm most grateful for as well.
That's awesome. I mean, I can't think of a better way to wrap it up than that. Ryan, thank you so much for coming on. This was eye-opening. I'm sorry for taking more of your time than I planned to.
No, it's probably my fault because I just keep going, and I want, well, the reason for that is because I want you, the listeners, to know what it is like to be a minor leaguer, because you hear what it's like to be a big leaguer a lot,
Yeah.
but you don't hear what it's like to be a minor leaguer, let alone a minor leaguer who's just kind of like in the crowd, right? Because whether you know me or not, if you know me, you're probably a huge Yankee fan. But if you never knew me, you wouldn't be able to have heard from me. So having this platform to kind of speak about my experience is awesome. I definitely want to come back on to talk more.
Anytime.
Obviously, I have so much to talk about. Yeah, no, I really appreciate it, Will. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, we'd love to have you come back whenever you want. Anywhere people should be looking for you, anything you want to plug, I'll give you the floor.
Yeah, I mean, you can follow me on Instagram, rligi, I think is what it is. I don't really know it, so if you just type in my name, you might find it. But I mean, I'm wearing the company I work for now. I'm wearing the shirt. It's called Zone Coach. I'm a mental performance coach now. And so if you want to learn more about us, just go to our website, zonecoach.com. You can see our social media, which is growing right now. And if you want to contact me personally, you can schedule through zonecoach.com. But I'm in the mental sector now, and hopefully you can kind of understand why I'm there, because
Definitely.
And if you don't have your mindset right and you're traveling like that in the minor leagues, it is a challenge. And I had the blessing to work with a guy by the name of Jim Fannin my entire baseball career, starting from Notre Dame to the end, who's worked with guys like Alex Rodriguez every single day of his life. Yankee fans, A-Rod. Frank Thomas every day of his life. Guys like Mike Cameron, Randy Johnson, Manny Ramirez. So tons of dudes that Jim has worked with. I had the privilege and the pleasure to work with Jim as a mental consultant for my whole career. And I know if I didn't have him, I wouldn't have survived. I would not have survived, maybe even Notre Dame. So now I say I want to give that back to people. And you can follow Zone Coach. Just take a look at our website. That's all I would say. That's my plug-in, I guess. Take a look at our website. We do some amazing things. We not only help individuals, but we're here to help children as well, and help parents help their children. So yeah, Zone Coach. I love it. It's been a blast.
That's awesome. Well, Ryan, thank you again so much for coming on. We'll have to have you back soon.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This was fun.
Absolutely. Okay, with that, thank you all so much for listening. Ryan, thank you again for joining us on the Yankees Files podcast. It was an awesome time interviewing you, and go Irish, who have advanced in the college football playoff. To all of our listeners, followers, subscribers, etc., you know the drill. You can keep up with everything we do at yankeesfiles.com. You can follow us on Twitter, where we're at Yankees Files. You can get the podcast wherever you get your podcasts, with the added bonus of video if you're listening on Spotify. You can also get the entire video podcast on YouTube, youtube.com/@crosstownsports, where you will also get the Battle of New York when it returns. Again, thank you so much for your support of Yankees Files in 2024. We can't wait to see what the new year will bring, both to us and to the Yankees. And we'll be back sometime early in 2025 for another episode recapping everything that's gone on in the offseason to this point. Until then, happy holidays. Let's go Yankees.